The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Well, Rube, we've had a weekend now to digest this Eagles trade. We did a podcast right after. It was so fresh. So a weekend in, you still feeling the same way?
I think I'm a little more. It's interesting. There's a lot of things to weigh with this trade, including Howie's draft history. And I think with some teams, I would like to trade more. I think there's a bigger chance for Howie to mess up 12 than 6. And I think that, or wherever the other pick is, I think that has to be taken into account. 6 is kind of Howie proof. I'm not sure the other. I mean, and that's true for anybody. I mean, you're going to have a bigger hit rate on 6 than 12, or wherever else they pick. But potentially it could be very good for a team that's rebuilding and just needs players. If they can get a corner and a weapon who are both starters, then it's a good trade.
And we'll see what ends up happening. We're going to get into some of the possibilities here on the Eagle Eye podcast, brought to you by PJ Wellahans with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. So we're going to start off. It was funny because we spent months looking at these mock drafts, and now you can just throw them all away. They don't mean anything. So we're going to kind of look at the more recent mock drafts. I know you did one as well. I did an Eagles only one. We'll kind of go through some of their possibilities. We'll also take a look at the idea. It's out there. We're not putting it out there, but the idea that the Eagles could parlay these picks into trading for a quarterback, which kind of became in style this offseason. The 17-game schedule, it's coming this year. We'll talk about what that means for the Eagles, and then some other stuff at the end. Rube will talk about tracks, so that's the reason to either stick around or go running somewhere. But let's start off with the mock drafts, because we spent months talking about Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase, and I guess there's a possibility one of those guys could fall and end up being there for the Eagles at 12. It just seems unlikely, right?
Yeah, I think that's unlikely. There's always surprises in the draft, and teams aren't necessarily thinking what analysts are thinking. Mm-hmm. And so there's always somebody that, goes before we think and after we think. I mean, we always sit there in the auditorium during the draft. The last year we sat in our living rooms, but we always sit there and, we're on pick 3 and we're all joking about, well, my mock draft is screwed up now. We all get the first one right, and then it's like a free for all. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think certainly, a Kyle Pitts might not have been there at 6, even with quarterbacks. I mean, he might be the first non-quarterback taken. So
Chase could be too.
Like, Kyle Pitts is the guy we really want at 6. If we don't think we're going to get him, may as well get out of 6. If we can't, we're not going to move up. So a lot of unknowns, but they'll be. I mean, when you start looking at the top 12 players in the draft, there's some really good players. I mean, they're going to get somebody who should be a really good player.
Yeah. The problem is the first 12 picks of a draft never all work out. That's just not the way statistically it goes. But Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated had an interesting look behind the scenes at the trades. And one of the notes in there was about the Eagles. And he basically said there's a growing thought that 5 is going to be a landing spot for Jamar Chase. Because of the Joe Burrow connection. He's trying to sell the front office on Chase to reunite the 2 LSU guys. And that was kind of given as one of the reasons the Eagles were like, all right, let's trade back. If we can't get Jamar Chase, let's move back, which makes sense to me. And there is a possibility, you're right, that we've heard a lot of talk about Pitts going at 4. So if they're sitting there thinking, we're not going to have Jamar Chase, we might not have Pitts at 6, is it worth it to stay there? Probably not. 12 is a big dip down. I mean, 6 spots is a lot in the first round. And that's why they got a first round pick out of it. But there still should be some good players left. So let's just go through. We'll start off with your mock. You had them taking Jalen Waddle, who has, pretty quickly become the favorite, I think, in these mock drafts for the Eagles. He checks a lot of boxes. I mean, he's He's a really dynamic receiver. He got hurt last year, so we didn't get to see him for the entire season, but he was off to, he might have been the Heisman Trophy winner. That's the kind of start he was off to this year.
Yeah, and it makes sense to go to 12 if you feel like you're not going to get Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts, and you feel like you could still get him at 12. It certainly makes sense. There's only been I have a story on this at some point in the next couple of days. There's only been 5 teams that have taken a receiver in the first 2 rounds 3 years in a row, and there's certainly a sense with all of them that, we're just going to keep doing this till we get it right. And most cases, the 5 teams that did it never got it right. So that, that's is how we going to keep banging his head against that wide receiver wall. I don't know. It's,
I would, by the way, I wouldn't let past failures stop me from picking again.
Yeah. And again, it's too early to say Rager's a failure. I thought he was disappointing last year, but again, there was a lot going on. He was hurt, quarterback issues, no preseason games, all that stuff that we've talked about so much. So I'm not ready to. I thought he was disappointing, but not. What's your thoughts on Rager? Are you?
I'm still excited to see him. Yeah, I wasn't calling him a failure.
Okay.
I think overall at that position they've had failures, and I think the one before that you can call a failure at this point with J-Jaw.
Yeah.
But no, Rager, I'm not ready to say that. I'm excited to see him actually in a new offense with a head coach who comes from a receiver background, the second year with that receivers coach who he has familiarity with. Like, I'm excited, and he should be healthy. So, I'm excited to see Rager this year.
Yeah. So, but still, yeah, it's, if the Eagles are really high on Rager, and the more I think about it, the more I think the trade from 6 to 12 could mean corner at 12 and receiver in the second round. I keep coming back to that. And I know I didn't mock that way, but since that was posted, I keep thinking, there's going to be probably there might be more value at corner at 12 than receiver. And
that's kind of my thinking, because you can have the third best receiver or you can have the top corner. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Or second, but I'm saying, like, I think Waddle is not considered by anyone to be the top receiver. Right. Whereas if Horn goes before Surtain, you might think, no, they got that wrong. We're getting the top corner, which I don't think is going to be the case. I don't think anyone who takes Jalen Waddle is going to think we got the top receiver in this draft.
That's a great point. Yeah. There's more of a drop off from to the third receiver than the third corner.
Yeah. And there might be teams in this draft who think Caleb Farley is the top corner, and I wouldn't knock them for that. He's really good, and he has other issues. The injuries have pushed him down a little bit, but talent wise, that might not be wrong.
Yeah, before he got hurt, he was considered the consensus best corner in the draft. And I think one thing we've learned over time is that you don't not take a guy because of one injury his senior year that might have kept him out of his pro day or out of the combine. You look at the body of work. I mean, a lot of corner makes sense in a lot of ways. I guess they haven't taken a first round corner since Lito Shepherd. So it's been almost 20 years. I think there might be value in that. I wouldn't have a problem with that if they go that way. And they also might think, we have more wide receiver talent than people think, because our quarterback issues were so, the whole year was just so whacked out in so many ways. They might be really high on Quez Watkins or Travis Fulgham or Rager or J-Jaw. Which would be a mistake, but new coach, like you said, wide receiver background, fresh look at all these guys. They are all young. They can run. Hightower can run, but they might look at the cornerback picture. I mean, they don't have prospects at corner. They have prospects. They have possibilities, at least a wide receiver that you can look at these guys and say, maybe. You look at the guys at cornerback, you're not saying that. So, that gets into need. But I think from a need standpoint and a best available standpoint, corner might be the way to go.
Yeah, you might be right. I just want to go through some of these Waddle. Like there's a lot of Waddle. JC Horn has been probably the second most popular one, and it really depends on how the teams in front of the Eagles view the cornerback position, because there are teams who make sense for a corner. I mean, Dallas is certainly one of them, and it just depends on how they rank these corners. But like I said, I mean, if a team goes out and takes Horn, I still think there's a pretty good chance the Eagles are sitting there saying they just took the second best corner in the draft. We're going to get our guy at 12, and I think that's very possible.
And Horn, I mean, it comes down to, and I think Howie's a guy that kind of looks at game tape more than pro day. I mean, you're going to take all that into account, but just from the way he's spoken over the years, I mean, he doesn't. And I think JC Horn might have moved up past the other two guys because of his pro day, which was incredible. And not saying that's a mistake. It's just a different way of looking at things. So if you go by game tape, maybe you're not taking JC Horn, but if you go by pro day, maybe you are. I think all three of those guys have a chance to be, CB2 across from Darius Slay, and then CB1, or even CB Co1, by year two, if Slay's here, which I guess he would be. Does his extension, what is Slay's extension as far as 2020, 2022?
Likely he'll be here.
Right?
Yeah.
It's passing league. They value the position.
It'll be interesting to see if they stop, if they don't travel, like if they were to draft the corner in the first round, maybe they keep traveling Slay for a little bit, but if that kid looks good, maybe they stop.
Why would you? Yeah. Who's the last cornerback that the Eagles gave a second contract to, a long-term contract? Like Jalen Mills got a second contract as a safety. Who's the last corner they gave a second long-term contract to?
You mean like someone they drafted?
Yeah. Or even not, even like a guy like they signed him and then they signed him again. I mean, I can't think of one.
Yeah, not like a long term. There have been, the year.
Yeah, but like a multi-year deal. I mean, I don't know. Asante Samuel?
It might have been Asante.
I mean, that's not. I mean,
but that's not a surprise. They haven't had any good corners.
Yeah,
we know that. It's not like they just haven't had any.
Yeah. So the more I think about it, the more I think. But who are some of the other names there? There could be a non-corner, non-wide receiver. It's possible.
Sure. I mean, Devontae Smith, he's on here. I don't think that's crazy. I mean, I think there is a chance that a team could look at Waddle and think we like him better in the pros than Devontae Smith. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he drops to 12. This one from Sam Farmer, Justin Fields, that doesn't really make sense to me. I get what he's saying. He's like, hey, that the value there would be too great, and if they liked him. But my thing with quarterbacks is like, if you like him, you go get him. You would have taken him at 6 if you liked him.
Right.
This one has Kyle Pitts dropping that far. I don't see that.
Who's got Kyle Pitts at 12?
Ryan Wilson from CBS, but those guys fill out a mock draft every day. They have to keep cycling them. I mean, but like things happen, and we talked like CeeDee Lamb last year dropping to 17. No one saw that coming. So some of these scenarios sound so implausible as we sit here. What is it, 30th of March? But are they? I mean, are they really? Because sometimes things happen. Like no one thought CD was going to drop that far last year.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Word gets around the league about, this guy got arrested in 10th grade, and this guy. I mean,
the poor Laramie Tunsil thing a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, biggest day of the kid's life, and these pictures get released of him smoking in a gas mask, and he starts dropping in the draft and it was so close to the draft, and no one had time to do any homework on it. Yeah. I mean, but that was an unusual case, but guys always drop for different reasons. And then I think there is the part of it where the GMs are sitting in their war rooms, and they're seeing this player who everyone thought was really great start to drop, and everyone's like, well, why is he dropping? What do they know that I think there's some of that goes on.
Yeah. which is wrong. I mean, if you believe in the player and you've researched the player and studied the player and talked to his high school teammates and his college teammates and his coaches, his family, have faith.
But you haven't necessarily done that. Like a couple years ago with Andre Dillard, they didn't do enough homework on him because they didn't think he was going to be a possibility. And all they had was the evaluation of him. Jeff Statlin had taken a long look at him and liked his athleticism. And he was sitting there at 22 and they thought, we never thought this was going to happen. Let's trade up and get him. And I don't know if that's going to work out. We still don't know that, I guess, but early returns aren't great.
Right. Well, I guess that's why you do your due diligence on 700 guys.
Yeah, but you just can't, as much as you do, you can't go complete deep dive on everyone.
Sure.
You just can't do it.
That's true.
And you do have to kind of hedge your bets a little bit. Like you have to gear your studying toward the guys you think you have a realistic shot of getting.
Yeah. Mock drafts are a funny animal because, and I made sure not to look at any before I did mine, because I just wanted to look at where teams were and who's the best guy there that fits their needs. But there's such a group think, like when they were at 6, everybody had them taken, either Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase. And I mean, it's just, it makes sense. There's a reason, but it's like if you look at, 20 mock drafts, 16 will have them taking Jalen Waddle right now. I don't know if there's, and how many have them taking a cornerback, which I think is just as likely, maybe more likely now. But
yeah, maybe. You know what's funny? A few years ago, when Mike Mayock took the Raiders job, and I still think this has happened, I think the absence of him in the NFL media world has kind of changed the way we view, because he had such a big voice in that world as a media member. And now he went to the Raiders. And I remember his first year as GM with the Raiders, some of his picks were surprising. But I wondered, like, if he were still in the media, those picks wouldn't have been surprising because he would have talked about the guys that he liked, and then they would have risen on these media draft boards. And then when he picked them, they wouldn't have been that crazy. Right.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why I always say, when the perception of a guy sliding in the draft or moving up in the draft isn't real. It's all that is the teams having a different evaluation of a player than mock drafters.
Yeah. But sometimes though, like the teams are still filling out their evaluations too. So things do change. When these pro days happen, as they learn more about them, as they do deeper dives into tape, like things do change, but not as drastically as it appears from the outside at times.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other names? Any kind of strange names in those mock drafts that you looked at?
No, didn't see any there. I've heard some other names, like people talking about Kwity Paye from Michigan. Probably a little early for him in the draft. It's just not a great edge rusher class, so I don't think the Eagles should force it at 12. We know they love defensive linemen and offensive linemen, but I think no, I haven't seen an offensive lineman mock there, but if Rashawn Slater's there from Northwestern, like I don't think that would be crazy. He might be the best value pick at that point.
Yeah. Would you be shocked if they trade down again?
Not shocked. I'd be a little surprised. What are we gonna get, another 4th round draft pick? Like, what are we doing here?
I don't know.
Get a good player. Draft a player.
They seem to understand that they need volume of players.
Yeah, but at a certain point, you got to draft a good player.
I'm with you. I'm saying.
Yeah, do you think it's more likely they trade down or up from 12?
Down.
Really?
Yeah.
I think up. I think they could hop up a few picks if they think there's a guy there. They have that. They have the ammo to do it.
That'd be interesting.
And they already netted a 1st round pick out of trading down the first time. So if you have to give up a 3rd to go get your guy, I can see that happening. 3rd or 4th.
Mess up all the mock drafts again.
It would, but they're all going to be mad. A few years ago, this is a one-eye story. I apologize, but
that's all right. You're allowed.
when I was covering the Texans, I had the worst mock draft ever. I got one right in the first round, but I got the Texans pick right at 27 when they picked DeAndre Hopkins. But every other pick I got wrong.
All that matters is you get the hometown team right.
I thought so. Yeah. Speaking of hometown team, I want to go through my Eagles only mock draft. I'll go through it quickly. I just want to get your take on it. With the 12th pick, I had them taking Surtain because my idea here is that another team is going to fall in love with Horn, and it drops, in my opinion, the better corner to the Eagles at 12. In round 2, I have them going receiver Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. He's undersized. He's like 5'9", 5'10", but he's super fast, super speedy. He has explosion. I think him in Sirianni's offense would be a home run. I think it'd be really fun. And then the third, I'll go through the third round, and then I'll let you kind of tell me what you think. Quinn Miners from Wisconsin Whitewater. I don't even know if he'll be there at pick 70, but he's a really fun prospect because he misses 2020 year. He comes from a Division III school, but kind of dominated the Senior Bowl, and he could be a Jason Kelce replacement. Not exactly the same body type, obviously. He's bigger, he's stronger, but he could be a center in the league, and it's about time to start thinking about that. And then with the second, third round pick, I had Patrick Jones from Pittsburgh. I asked Patrick Jones the second, so I'd have 2 seconds going. I didn't think about it that way. That'd be unusual, but I have Patrick Jones from Pittsburgh. Pretty talented edge rusher, good body of work in college, which we know how he kind of cares about. Maybe not as much as Joe Douglas, but cares about the body of work. So those would be my top 4 picks.
I was trying to think the last Division III player actually before we started that the Eagles drafted. I can't think of one. I mean, there haven't been a lot of Division III, players, in the league. Wisconsin Whitewater. I mean, they win. They're in like the Stag Bowl every year, like against.
Yeah. Who was the Eagles had? They didn't draft him. They had an offensive lineman from Mary Hardin Baylor. You know what I mean? Mary Hardin Baylor. That's the name of the school? And they traded him for Jeff Mayo. You know what I mean?
No.
Mary Hardin Baylor, Jeff Mayo.
You can Google it while I'm. I remember the Eagles had a D3 defensive lineman who's actually from Ohio Wesleyan, my alma mater.
Nate Menken.
Oh yeah, Nate Menken.
He was from Mary Hardin Baylor. Sorry.
That was a good trade for both teams.
Both went on to have Hall of Fame careers.
Dino Hall, Glassboro State, right?
Is that right?
Yeah. Dino Hall was a pretty good returner for a few years. There haven't been many.
But we know the Eagles don't care about. I mean, they made their franchise quarterback from an FCS.
Yeah, that's true. No, I like that pick. I think that pick makes a lot of sense, but it's crazy how he just kind of came on the scene out of nowhere with the Senior Bowl. I like all those picks, and I think they all make sense. Like I said, I'm thinking more and more corner at 12, and if you do corner at 12, you're most likely to go receiver at in the second round at 37, and if you get an edge rusher and interior lineman in the third round, I think you've in the first. I mean, they have 4 of the first 85 picks. 86 picks, 84 picks, right?
84, yeah.
84 picks. And if you
everything got screwed up this year because the Patriots had pick 77, but it got forfeited. So it's 85th, but it's 84.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So if you can get out of there with an edge rusher, an interior lineman, a receiver, and a potential CB1, I think you've done what you can do with those first 4 picks.
Yeah. I agree. I'll just run through the other picks because there's obviously 11. I don't think they're going to make 11 picks, but for the sake of this, I went with all 11. In the 4th round, I have Cameron McGrone from Michigan, the linebacker. Had a really good 2019. Didn't play a ton in 2020. Wasn't as good, but I think there's something there. In round 5, I have Osa Odigizua from UCLA, the defensive tackle. Kind of an undersized guy, but I like drafting pass rushing traits as an interior defensive lineman. Like you can find run stuffers, but I'll draft a guy with pass rush ability and then hope he can stop the run instead of the other way around.
Well, I want to hear that conversation between Howie and Chip when, hey, we're thinking about taking.
yeah. I didn't think about that, but I like that pick. And then in the 6th round, the 3 6-rounders, Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana. It's funny. I didn't even realize this. I had a UCLA guy with Chip, and then I'm going to a Doug school with Louisiana, kind of a Doug school. Not really, not Monroe, but Elijah Mitchell, who big guy, runs tough, but he also can catch the ball a little bit. Christian Uphoff from Illinois State, another guy kind of like Miners who didn't get to play this year because they didn't have a season, but another Senior Bowl guy, performed well. And then one of my favorite picks in the 6th round, Pro Wells from TCU, big tight end, former basketball player. I want to give Jason Michael, the tight ends coach, a project. And maybe it's Hakeem Butler, whoever it is. I want to give him a project because we saw what he did with Mo Alley Cox. And if you can do that with him, let's just get him traits. Let's find a guy with traits at the tight end position, give it to him and see if he can do it. I'm willing to do that with a 6th round pick.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Last 2, Trey Norwood from Oklahoma. A little taller, like 6 foot nickel corner, but he can play safety a little bit. And Malcolm Kuntz from Buffalo, edge rusher.
Love Malcolm Kuntz.
You,
this kid really flashed.
You know who my favorite Buffalo edge rusher is?
Who?
Steven Means.
Steven Means business.
Yeah.
We were here's my one eye story. Many years ago we had a game in Buffalo, Eagles Bills, and I used to go to like the local college bookstores. I like to get like a hoodie from whatever college. We did that up in, where were we, Providence, and we went to the bookstore up at the top of that mountain.
Went to Brown. Yeah.
What's that?
Brown.
Yeah, we were at Brown, but I was like, I had like a late flight, which never happens anymore. I had like a 2:00 flight, so I was like, Monday morning, I'm going to drive to the bookstore at Buffalo and get a hoodie. Well, there was a blizzard. It was a terrible, this is Buffalo. I mean, we've done podcasts in a blizzard in Buffalo in the car. But I was determined to get to that bookstore and get a hoodie. And the snow just kept coming down. And I checked out of the hotel. I was going to go to the bookstore, then get to the airport, get the car back. It just got worse and worse. And I'm like, I couldn't even see where the roads were. And I made it to the bookstore. It was open because nothing ever closes in Buffalo. This blizzard. And I'm in the store and it's getting worse and worse. And I noticed there's no cars on the roads. I get my hoodie and I started driving and I realized I wasn't on a road anymore.
What do you mean?
I was not on a road. I was driving back to the airport and I was not on a road. There was a road that went out of the university into a circle. And I didn't even know because there was so much snow. I couldn't tell that the road stopped and went to the right in the circle and I was in the middle of the circle on this like berm. And there was probably like a statue and something. And I'm sitting there in the car and just rent a car with a Buffalo hoodie in a blizzard. And that's my Buffalo story. But I did manage to get to the highway. Once I was on the highway, I could get to the airport. And our flight was, I don't know how we took off because it was just blizzarding but we did. And
I'm picturing the pilot like leaning out the window with an ice scraper. I just got to get this and we can take off, folks.
It's crazy. Some airports, like they're just so used to it. Like if we had that snow in Philly, it would shut the airport down.
Month.
But yeah, but like, Portland, Maine, Buffalo, the snow belt, man, they fly in and out of there. It was a little harrowing.
Yeah, I bet.
Hey, beer, wings, sports, PJ Wheelahands is the place to be to get all three. Local sports fans gather together to catch all the action at your neighborhood PJs. Visit pjspub.com to find a location near you.
I can't wait. Once we're through all this, we're doing a live podcast, right? We're going to figure out a way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That'd be fun. And we've had people ask us a bunch of times, especially before the pandemic, like when you guys are going to do one, and we were starting to like figure out a way to do it. And obviously that kind of got stopped, but eventually we will, and it'll be fun. We'll hang out.
What if they throw bottles at us?
We'll request no glassware that day.
No, that would be fun. That would be a trip. I would love that. I'd love doing that.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I haven't even seen you in how long? Since the
Well,
games,
a couple, yeah, home games.
home
Yeah.
games. Yeah, it's weird. The other part of the Eagles trade down is this idea that's been out there, and Dan Orlovsky from ESPN kind of talked about it earlier this week. But the idea that the Eagles they have all these picks now, a ton of ammo. Maybe they try to use this ammo to trade for a quarterback. And he brought up Russell Wilson, who we know is kind of unhappy with the situation there in Seattle. The Eagles weren't on his original list of 4 teams, which I think he took out of a hat because the Bears were on there. But uh, I get the idea behind that, and obviously the Eagles were reportedly keeping an eye on Deshaun Watson. I don't know. Obviously, that's a much different situation right now with the allegations and the lawsuits. But from a football standpoint, that makes sense too. But I just want to kind of talk about the idea that the Eagles now have all these picks, first round picks. They can if a quarterback's going to be traded, they can theoretically compete with anyone to get him.
That's true. And I don't think it's as far-fetched as it might sound. And you take Russell Wilson in particular, and people say, well, why would you go out? Why would a team that's rebuilding go out and give up assets for a 32-year-old quarterback? But a 32-year-old Hall of Fame quarterback who might have had his best year. I mean, he had a career high 40 touchdowns last year.
He was looking like the MVP for a while.
He was, and he threw some picks, but more than usual. But gosh, he's still one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. And he hasn't, I mean, he's one of those guys who can play till he's 40. So when you look at him and you say, well, why would a rebuilding team? Well, because you could be, even if you make this trade in 2 years, you could have, first of all, he would give you instant credibility. You'd be an instant playoff contender with him. And I said this last year, if you took Carson Wentz out of there, and I did it again, I ruined another Carson-free pod, but
go back to the 0.
the big board. If you replace Russell Wilson with Carson Wentz last year, you have a 9-17. Everything else being equal. That's how much a quarterback means to a team. So if you want to rebuild, what better way to rebuild than with one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, who's still as good? Because if you're getting a 32-year-old quarterback that's fading and declining, and that's not who you want in a rebuild. But this guy showed no sign of decline. If anything, he just keeps getting better. He still averaged 6.2 yards running per rush, which tells you he's just as fast. I mean, we've seen him. He's every bit as fast, athletic. He's never missed a game, so you don't have to worry about that. Although once guys get here, they seem to all of a sudden get hurt. But I think it makes a lot of sense. It would make you a contender instantly. And by 2022, when you're able to surround him with even more talent, in theory, I mean, because you're not going to have the 2 receivers you had out there. You could have had one of them, but you're not going to have those 2 guys. But I'll tell you what, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I would think long and hard about doing something like that. He's not a typical 32-year-old quarterback. And I think it's short-sighted to look at it and say a rebuilding team doesn't need an aging quarterback, because he's not that. He's only that in a number. And, he would make you a contender now. And if you could surround him with some guys in 2 years, you could really, a contender, like a 500 or better team, a playoff contender. But in 2 years, you have Russell Wilson, if he's still playing at the level, and there's no reason to think he wouldn't, you might be onto something.
Yeah, I mean, my only fear with that, and look, I think you have to be interested in, if you can get a player like that, you have to be interested in it, but you're going to have to trade all these picks. You don't have a very good roster, and you're going to have to pay the quarterback, like he makes a lot of money. So now you have a lot of your cap tied up in that one player, so you don't have as much money to spend in free agency, and you don't have those first round picks. Like, how are you going to be able to surround him with enough talent to really become a contender for not just kind of a low-level playoff team, but are you gonna have enough talent to really compete in his window, like his real window, not hanging on at the end, but his real window?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to decide is what that window is. Is it 4 years? And what can we be in 2 years? When you say, Russell, look, this year we're not, but by next year we expect. And I think just having Russell Wilson is going to make every single skill guy on the team better. And Travis Fulgham will be better because Russell Wilson's his quarterback. Jalen Reagor will be better. He has the ability to get them the ball in a way that Carson just last year was unable to do for whatever reason. Miles Sanders as a receiver will improve. You have Goddard. So I mean, all of a sudden, maybe, one of these other young receivers can blossom with Russell Wilson as his quarterback. I think the guys you have are going to be that much better. And then, you're still going to have some picks. It's not going to get rid of every pick. I mean, it depends what it costs. And it's certainly a concern. I mean, they don't have offensive studs. And you might want to get them one, but I wouldn't not acquire him because of that concern. He might not want to be here. He might say, look, you guys just don't have any receivers. I don't want to, it's not for me.
I still don't understand how the Bears made his list of 4 teams, whatever that was, a month or so ago.
Yeah, that was kind of.
The Bears had to wake up and be like, whoa, we're on the list.
And they offered like 7 first-round picks for him, and they still couldn't get it done. So yeah. I don't think that was a real team. But yeah, I don't know if he'd want to come here. But I wouldn't rule it out because of his age, I guess is my point. I wouldn't say he's too old to come to a rebuilding team. There's not one area. And at some point he will decline. Every quarterback does, but not everyone. I mean, you look at the guy in Tampa. And yeah. I think Russell Wilson, I'm not sure he's going to play until he's 43, but, you look at him and physically, he's never hurt. He's never hurt. He's never missed
a game, has he?
He's never missed a game in his life.
Yeah.
Never. I don't know if he's missed a snap. He's like Malcolm. He's a freak. And the way he plays the game, it's miraculous. He's so smart. I mean, he never takes big hits. You never see him, take on a linebacker in the middle of the field. He could play. I don't see any reason he doesn't have five good years left. 3 or 4 elite years left at a minimum. So that if you're going to make the move, you need to count on that. And I don't see any reason you wouldn't get that if you go get him. You'd be giving up a ton, and that's the concern. That's some young weapons, but again, those guys you're going to have for 4 or 5 years anyway. So if you can get 3 or 4 good years out of Russell, think about it.
What would you be willing to give up?
A 2 and a 4. It's a great question. I mean, I'd give up 3 1s.
I think that's where it probably starts. It's those 3 1s next year.
I'd give up 3 1s. I would.
Well, you're assuming that's a 1.
What's that?
You're assuming, I guess, that the Colts is a 1.
Yeah.
I mean, Orlovsky was talking about it like 4 1s. That's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. How do you fill in a roster? How do you build around him? I don't know. Like
maybe 37. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
But
I understand your point that like these opportunities don't come around very often, and it's been obviously a really weird offseason with quarterbacks getting traded. The nice thing is they have those 3 1s, potentially 3 1s next year. They could let this season play out and then approach it again.
Yeah. And then there's the theory that this is the team that drafted Marcus Smith and Danny Watkins and Andre Dillard and, in the first round and Derek Barnett, who's okay, I guess. And do those first round picks have more value bringing you Russell Wilson than bringing you who Howie would pick?
Proven commodity. I get it. Yeah. I mean, picks are more valuable before you use them a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with this team. So,
Yeah,
I
they're like
mean,
new cars.
you know, who's it? I, I mean, I guess Carson was a good first round pick.
Yeah,
You can't argue with that. He helped him win a Super Bowl, but I mean, it's not a pretty list.
not recently, no.
So is Howie going to sit there and think, man, I'll let the Seahawks do the picking for me? They, that it's. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think it's as crazy as it might sound.
And we do know Howie has always loved Russell Wilson. The Eagles have always loved
Yeah.
Russell Wilson. They always regretted not being able to draft him. And we've heard the story that they were planning on taking him. So that year they had and it's really part of the reason the Eagles said last year they took Jalen Hurts in the second round. They said we got burned once before with Russ, where it was the 2012 draft. They had 2 picks in the second round. And I think they moved a little bit, but they ended up taking Kendricks and Vinny Curry. And their plan was to take Russ with the 88th pick. He went 75th to the Seahawks. Next round, Eagles took Foles, which in a roundabout way worked.
No, the same round, right? They were both in the third round, weren't they?
Foles was a 4th round pick.
No, he was a 3, I believe.
Was it?
I think Wilson and Foles were both in the third round.
We got to look it up.
Yeah, Nick was a 3rd round pick. He was 88.
Oh, that's right. That's right. My bad. That's what I was saying. They were planning on taking. That's right. They were planning on taking Wilson with the 88th, and then their next plan was to take Foles in the 4th. They wanted to double dip, but instead they just took Foles at 88. That's right.
No, I would expect you to know where the Super Bowl MVP was drafted. Sorry. So what do you think about the 17-game schedule?
I was going to make it really awkward for you. It's inevitable. By the time you guys listen to this, it'll probably be finalized. I see a lot of players upset about it, but it was collectively bargained. We all knew it was happening. If there was one thing that was going to trip up the last CBA, it was the 17-game schedule, and I'm surprised it didn't.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know if the players got enough to add an entire another game, but it was always going to happen. The thing I'm not, and you're a stats guy, so it's probably going to mess with you a while. But even like just talking about records, like you think of like an 8-18 that doesn't exist anymore. It's a weird thing to like wrap your brain around, especially for me. All I've ever known is a 16-game schedule, so that's weird.
Yeah, and I think the league started at 12 and then went to 14, then went to 16, I think in 78. So it's been 16 for for almost half a century, over 40 years, and it's a good number. And I mean, my biggest concern isn't the stats and the records. I mean, that's stuff you get used to and you deal with. But I mean, the notion that there's not going to be any more 500 teams. Jeff Fisher can't coach anymore. I mean, he can't be in the league anymore.
Or he's thinking, hey, maybe I can go.
Maybe I can go 9-8.
Yeah.
He'd probably go 8-1 though, But my concern is injuries, and you look at the Eagles. I mean, and they can't get a guy through 16 games, and now they got to get 53 guys through 17. I just think the longer the season is, and I'm surprised that the union went for it.
And without an extra bye week. It's 17 games in 18 weeks.
So, you guys are getting paid less per game, because there's guys that signed contracts before, obviously before this year, they're getting paid less per game, so, and the way the revenue is going to be coming in the next few years, the owners are the ones that are winning, and the players are losing. And
eventually the players will win, though, when
eventually
TV money comes in, salary cap keeps rising, and they'll get it'll take a while, but they'll get paid. But they're always going to lose. They're employees.
Yeah, no, you're right, but it won't necessarily be that all the same. I mean, there's going to be a lot of players who are playing 17 games now and making less per week who won't be benefiting from that.
They might not be in the league when the money comes.
A lot of them won't be in the league. So, yeah, and I mean the minimum contracts did go up, but yeah, I'm just worried about, there's so many injuries already, and now asking these guys to play 17 games. And I looked at a lot of the team records, like a lot of them, my initial reaction was every team record is going to get broken, but that's not true, because a lot of them, like the second best at that pace over 17 games, wouldn't have broken the 16-game record, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I think, some will, games played will, but like Shady scored 20 touchdowns in a season. Like, it's not like it's going to be easy to score 20 touchdowns in 17 games.
Yeah.
So I know some people are going to, I mean, I like the balance of 16 games. You're halfway through the season, you're quarter way through the season. It had a nice balance to it, like 162 games in baseball. I mean, I just don't like it. There's no reason. I mean, I like football, and it's more football to watch, but I don't like it.
I think we'll just get used to it, but
I'm sure we will.
The Bears went the entire what?
Are we going to get paid more for covering an extra game?
We'll try to work that out. The Bears went the entire length of 16-game schedules without a 4,000-yard passer. The Eagles had one, and they just traded him.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think it would take 238 yards per game to break Carson's record, which is really low. Like Jalen Hurts, if he plays 16 or 17 games next year, he's gonna throw for 4,000 yards. He will. He just, by accident. I mean, he had 2 350-yard games as a rookie. So, I mean, you don't have to be that good to throw for 4,000 yards. So that, those, I mean, that's a really low record anyway. Somebody might have broken that pretty soon. I mean, there's some years Donovan was on pace for that, for 4,200 and got hurt. It's amazing. Matt Ryan's thrown for 4,000 10 years in a row, and most years 4,500. But
and you have guys like Stafford who are just throwing for 5 each year.
Yeah. I mean, he might throw for 6, 17 games.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Hey, Eagles fans, it's time to look forward to a dream vacation, the Philadelphia Eagles fan cruise. Now, tickets are selling out fast, and the ship sails March of 2022 for 7 days and 7 nights with Eagles fans and only Eagles fans. Book your tickets now at PhiladelphiaEaglesCruise.com. This is our last podcast of March.
It is. Yeah.
How about that?
Almost
March went
April.
by quickly.
Did it?
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay.
Yeah.
April's my birth month.
Oh, what's your birthday?
April 14th.
Okay.
Same date as Patrick Surtain.
Which one? Senior or junior?
Junior.
Okay.
The second.
All these guys that are the second, I covered all their dads.
It's weird. Yeah. I mean, like having the top 2 corners in this draft be sons of NFL players is strange. And I was doing all this mock draft work and realizing these kids were born in the year 2000. It's not a good feeling for me.
I saw your tweet about that, but I mean, I covered Jalen Reagor's dad not that long, like for NBC, like for us, for NBC, for CSN, like not for the Burlington County Times. So,
what year was he here?
I don't know. No, it probably was.
It probably was, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
But that's still, I mean,
I covered Monte Reagor late in my Eagles covering career, and now I'm covering his son, and I'll probably cover Jalen's son at some point. But
we have just a few more little things to get to. Yeah. Greg Ward, Alex Singleton.
Not so little, Dave.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. One's a track thing, which we're saving the best for last for you, Rube. Greg Ward, Alex Singleton signed their exclusive rights free agent tenders. You've probably heard about this. It basically just means they decided to play this year. They don't, these exclusive rights free agents, it's for 2 or fewer years of service. they're not really free agents. I mean, they get offered a tender, and if they don't, then they become free agents. But the Eagles wanted Ward, Singleton, and Boston Scott, so they offer them a tender. Those players can either sign it, it's a minimum deal, either sign it and play or sit out. They're obviously going to sign it. It's more of a bookkeeping thing. So Ward and Singleton have signed. Boston Scott will sign whenever he's in the building next, and then they'll have both of those players or all three of those players for really cheap this year, and then they become restricted free agents after 2021.
Three of their better players, sadly.
Yeah, I know.
That says more about the roster than those three guys. But yeah, Greg Ward's the only receiver on the roster with 40 career catches. Especially, well, that's true now that Marquise Goodwin's no longer on the team.
Go ahead.
All right, so Marquise Goodwin, and I love this story. We all know what happened, that, you know, his rights reverted back to the 49ers. They released him. He didn't sign anywhere. What happened to Marquise Goodwin? So I don't know what you do on a random Monday night at like 10 o'clock at night, but I look at track results from around the country, you know, big weekend of track. So I'm looking at the results of a meet in Florida, and my eyes did a double take. I get to the long jump, and the winner of the long jump, this meet in Miramar, Florida, I think it's like right by Disney World. It might be like that Wide World of Disney, whatever. The winner of the long jump is Marquise Goodwin. And I'm like, it's got to be the same guy. And we know he was an Olympic long jumper, but that was in 2012. He hadn't competed in the long jump since 2016 at all. Hadn't been to a track meet in 5 years. He goes down there and not only wins the long jump, he jumps 26.7 3/4, number 4 mark in the world this year, number 2 among Americans. And it's an Olympic qualifier. Now, what that means is that if he finishes in the top 3 in the Olympic trials, which will be held in Eugene, Oregon in June, if he's in the top 3, he's already got his qualifier and he makes the U.S. Olympic team, which would be incredible. And it's really, I mean, to jump 26.7, and now he's jumped 27.8. That's his PR. That was 5 years ago in France. And he's been to the Olympics. So, I mean, he's a world-class long jumper and a world-class athlete. He's also a good sprinter. But to not compete for 5 years and to play football, and, you know, it's a different kind of fitness, a different kind of lifting, a different kind of speed. It's incredible. It's remarkable to have a 5-year layoff and then have a world-class long jump in your first competition. And he only had 2 legal jumps. He fouled 4 times, which isn't surprising, but he got a 26.5 3/4 and a 26.7 3/4. It's really incredible. So I was impressed. We know he's a great athlete. But I guess it kind of tells you what he's been doing for the last year. I mean,
Yeah, I guess so.
We all kind of assumed he wanted to play football. You know, he opted out because of COVID, and you know, he put out a really kind of heartfelt video about why he did it and his family and concerns about his family. He had a family member who I think was immunocompromised.
Well, he and his wife had really struggled to become parents.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So understandable. But he's got a new sport, and it's going really well for him. And it's not that far-fetched to think he could make the Olympic team, because, you know, it usually takes about 27.6, 27.8 to be in the top 3 at the trials. And you know, he's a few inches off that in his first meet in 5 years. So we'll keep an eye on him. We'll do the daily or the weekly Marquise Goodwin watch on every podcast. We'll look at his latest meets, the wind conditions, who else.
I feel like you're gonna like break into the Phillies Talk podcast and just start talking about Marquise Goodwin.
This just in.
It is cool. It is a cool story.
Yeah,
and
he's a good dude, and I wish him well.
Yeah, no, and I think everyone understood why he opted out. It'll be interesting. Was he just a long jumper? I mean,
he was a pretty good sprinter.
Sprintered, right?
Not world class, but I mean, he was an All-America at Texas on a couple of relay teams, and so he's fast enough. But he's not like an Olympic hopeful in the sprints. But I mean, he's got tremendous speed. Obviously, to jump 27 feet, you have to. Yeah. But yeah, he'll focus on the long jump, and I wonder
if is this a definite sign you think that he's aiming for the Olympics, or do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
You don't think he's going to play football?
I don't. Well, I mean, the Olympics are now, I guess, tentatively in September in Tokyo. But if he makes a team, I mean, he's made $17 million playing football.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's done track. I mean, track's been, he's talked about this. That track's his main love. To make an Olympic team, and if he doesn't, I mean, the Olympic trials are in June. He would still be able to get into a training camp. So if he's not in the top 3 in the trials, now, if nobody else posts an Olympic qualifier and he has the best jump, then he would still go because he has the qualifier. But that's kind of unlikely. But I would think he'd try to make the Olympic team. If he doesn't, he could get into a camp. And if he does, you know, go for it. Try to go to the Olympics in Tokyo.
Yeah, that'd be cool. All right.
There's no other reason to do this than if you're not aspiring for the Olympics.
He just wants to jump.
You're not going to make a lot of money long jumping. You make some at his level, you know, in the thousands. But I'd love to talk to him, and man, we should get him on the podcast talking about the long jump.
I might skip that day.
Oh, that's an emergency podcast right there.
It might be. All right. That's all we have today. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button there.
Do you know who the Eagles' other 27-foot long jumper in their history is?
No.
James Lofton, Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Is that right?
He was an All-America long jumper. Yeah, in college. And Jalen Reagor actually was a 26-foot long jumper in high school.
I did know that, but that's just because I looked it up last year. All right, that'll do it for Rube. I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by PJ Wellahans. We'll talk to you guys later in the week.